Welcome to another exciting episode of Bats, Balls and Banter, your ultimate destination for all things cricket. Cricket is more than just a game, it's a passion that unites millions across the globe. Here at Bats, Balls and Banter, we're dedicated to bringing you closer to the action, the stories and the personalities that make cricket the fascinating sport that it is. I'm your host, Kevin Pattenden. Grab your bat, hold on to your balls, settle in, and let's dive into the banter. So welcome to another episode, and today we have a very special guest whose cricket journey has spanned decades and influenced countless players. Please join me in welcoming Nigel Hall. Nigel's story is a rich tapestry of passion, dedication and an unwavering love for the game. His cricketing roots run deep, influenced by none other than his dad, who had the honour of training the legendary Derek Randall. From there, Nigel went on to make a name for himself, opening the bowling for the first team at just 16 years old. But cricket, as we know, is full of twists and turns, and Nigel's promising bowling career led to a Northamptonshire trial, where his action was put under scrutiny, ultimately pushing him to reinvent himself as a batsman. And that's only the beginning of this fascinating cricket saga. As club captain, he led his side to numerous trophies, etching his leadership into the club's history. His love for cricket has taken him across the world on unforgettable tours, and while coaching presented its challenges, his passion for the game never waned. Nigel even made his way into umpiring, gaining a new perspective from behind the stumps. Today he serves as the chairman of the Nottinghamshire Premier League, where he continues to shape and influence the future of the game in his region. We're thrilled to have him here to share his incredible journey, which is filled with triumphs, challenges and plenty of tales from the pitch. So Nigel, welcome to Bats, Balls and Banter. Hey, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Excellent, Kev. I'm happy to be here, mate.
Good. Look, you know, we've done you an intro there and it's gone through many things, but probably the best start, as always, is at the beginning. So some of your cricket origins then, really from the beginning. I know your dad had a huge influence on your cricket journey, and I know your family very well, obviously, and we've been involved together for many years. But and the fact that he trained the legendary Derek Randall must have had some impact. But how did it shape your early experiences and, well, in your mindset, really, into cricket?
Yeah, well, obviously, Dad had been a pro cricketer with Notts for 9 years, Grandad for 7 years. So it was in the family, and obviously they were highly respected. And then, yeah, Dad was responsible for the legendary Derek Randall and his cricket as he was growing up. So my first memories as a kid, I think I was only 6. I know I was only still playing with a tennis ball. And my dad at the time was Retford's first team captain, but interestingly, he was not second 11 captain as well. And he'd lead these fielding practices at Retford. And I couldn't believe Derek because they were hitting these huge balls, these huge catchers on the boundary. We've seen a number of times, a load of clubs do it. And Dad used to hit them a little bit higher, I noticed, every time this young Randall was underneath one. And Derek just caught them, no problem. And then Derek, in his own laughing style, and this is the bit I'd never forgotten, as a hard cricket ball, he started catching these huge skiers behind his back. and then, with the rest of the team laughing at him, they hit the next one at him, and as it was in the air, I hadn't seen it for myself, I wouldn't have believed it, but he put his hand between his legs, caught it about knee high, did a backward somersault and threw the ball back to my dad. It was a quite remarkable image.
That's just one of those things you'll never ever forget, obviously. And then when, you know, as we know, Derek went on to represent England. And I've said this before on previous podcasts. To me, arguably, I agree, you know, there's been many fielders of quality for England. But I think he's got to be up there as one of the best. And so now you're recalling some of these things. Was it just a natural ability that he had? Or did he have to work at it as well?
No, he had to work at he had to work at the batting. He was a natural fielder. I mean, interestingly, and I don't think many people know this, Kev, but Derek was turned down by Notts.
Wow.
And that seems quite incredible. I don't think many people will know.
No, I don't.
My dad told Notts about this young lad, and you should come and see him. And they turned him down. They told my dad that, he was an above-average fielder, but he moved and fidgeted too much at the crease to make a batsman. And they felt that Dad's only recommendation was because he was biased.
Wow.
So
okay, this is news. This is news.
Yeah, and then just to get Derek on the road, then 3-4 weeks later, same season, Dad captain the second 11. He gets a phone call the morning to say that we've had to take 3 of your players, Mike, out of your second team. They're going to play in the first team game at Trent Bridge. You're short. We've only got 10 men.
And this is not seconds.
This is not seconds. Back in the day, it was a different setup.
Yeah.
But they're going to go with 10 men. And my dad said, "Well, I'll bring the young lad he lives near me. I'll bring the young lad." And they said, "Yeah, okay. Well, we know he's a good fielder. Yeah, so bring him." And and Dad took Derek, and he got about 30 odd in the game. And suddenly somebody else saw him and went, "Hang on a minute, there might be a chance here." And okay. As history goes, thank goodness that's what happened. But
so really, then, just by luck, I suppose, it's hard to imagine a county side or second team being short on players. I thought that only happened at club level, but so it was a bit of luck then, really. The fact that they were players short. Your dad knew. I mean, we call him your dad, Mike Hall. You said, "Well, I'll bring the boy," and the rest just turned out to be history. But that's luck then in the end.
Well, I think it was luck, but I also think, look, with the ability he'd got, I reckon my dad would have got him to another county.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what I was going to lead on to. You wouldn't have left it there, surely. He had too much ability just to be turned down. So that was an early experience of yours then, obviously watching Derek, and, you say you're not even into double figures age-wise at this stage, and you're still playing with a tennis ball, and the first team, I'm assuming, they're out there and they're fielding, and he's doing all them crazy things. So brilliant experiences to remember and get you on the road to cricket. But did it help you in your mindset towards becoming a
absolutely
good cricketer?
My mindset was I knew my dad had been a pro cricketer. I could see the way Derek was going, and it set my mind that, look, at those early days, that's the only thing I'd got on my mind. And I wanted to become a professional cricketer. Simple as.
Did you look at Derek and think, I want to be a batter? Or did you know from the beginning you wanted to be a bowler? And the reason I ask that is because, obviously, you were opening the bowling in the first team at 16, so you were an opening bowler, really. If I remember rightly, again, we played at the same club for many years, but you opened the bowling with a guy called Pete Hacker, if I remember rightly, who I'm not quite sure how it came. It'd be a good story to know, actually, but was he not known for being at the time the fastest white man?
Well, that's what Derek. It was weird. That's how Derek called him, because by this time Derek was on the story I've just given you, we're talking a few years later now, when I seemed to get through second team cricket pretty quick. I was 16. Yeah. So we're talking probably eight years later, and Derek was on the staff, and it was Derek. It was in the mighty time this now. It was 79 I made my debut. So we're in the time of cricket where the best bowlers were those West Indian bowlers. They were pretty special.
They were, yeah.
And Derek described Pete Hacker as the fastest white guy bowling in cricket. He did make it very clear he was not. He wasn't saying he was the best.
No,
he was just fast.
What nationality was Pete?
Oh, he's English.
Oh, he was English, was he? Oh, okay. Yeah. And he was playing county cricket at the same time.
He was on the Notts staff. He was he was a pro. He was just far too fast for club cricket, but he was our pro.
Wow.
So I then have the opportunity to run in and bowl with him. And obviously I didn't particularly know this as a youngster, but we know in club cricket, don't we? If there's somebody really fast at one end, then club batsmen think, crikey, I'm struggling here. I'll try and get runs at the other end.
Yeah.
Yeah, and by this time I was 6'2", and I was
going to say, I mean, I don't think I ever faced you as a bowler, but you're a strapping guy. You're a big, tall, strong individual, and I would think at 16 coming into prime, you weren't slow.
No, I was sharp enough. And then what happened was, just because I got a few wickets and in the top section, of basketball, and then I just got this little bit. I was only a young kid, and I heard these little things about, oh crikey! And when he bowls a quick one, it's really quick, and that developed into, did he throw that quick one? And I heard this as a youngster, as a kid. At 16, you're only young, even though I was getting wickets. And my dad, as I got a little bit older, and I had a couple of years, my dad, because he felt that somebody should look at and see whether I was good enough. But because the weirdest thing was, I've lived in Nottinghamshire all my life. My dad, because of what had happened with Derek, and because my dad had been accused of being biased, my dad didn't want to say anything to Notts because he felt he'd get called that again. Yeah, biased. So that's how he got me a trial, and I got a trial with Northamptonshire.
Just before we come on to that, back to, if I may, because just listening to you talking here, it's creating quite a few questions in my head. And the fact you said, you were sharpish, but you could the one that you put in. If you hadn't have been opening the bowling with Pete Hacker, who we've just discussed was sharp, would you have tried? Was you trying to emulate him a little bit? Was you trying to? What was it like to bowl alongside him? Was you trying to be him, or?
No, definitely not trying to be him. I mean, he was left arm over the wicket, and he was just fat. He was out and out pace. I was bowling with a natural action, which actually I was swinging it, and I used to swing it into the right hander, and we always had as a catching position. I had many catches caught at leg slip. And I was naturally firing into the bowler's pads and whatever.
And that was just natural with your action then, would that be?
Natural with my action. And I just kept the ball, I was dead keen that I got the ball quick. I shined it like hell. Yeah. And I knew the way I held it, and I got the shine right, that I'd get this ball to move off the straight and narrow. So I was more interested in not bowling straight up and down, but when it was time to let one go, I could let one go. That's where I was.
Yeah, and I think that's key, isn't it, to any bowler, any young bowler, I suppose, listening, and any old people like me who have probably had their better days. I think what I learned was, good cricketers, if you've just got pace, a good batsman will pick you off. It's if you are doing something with pace that it becomes very difficult. And so any youngster listening to this, my advice as predominantly not an out-and-out quality bowler, but as a bowler more than a batter, then I always found I got better as the years went on, because I realised, and you've seen me, we've been on tours in the past where I've just tried to bowl as fast as I can. I remember, we will come back on track, and we'll come back to Northampton in a second, Nigel, but I remember bowling at Sutton-on-Trent. And I remember bowling at a chap called Melvin.
He could play.
Top shot Melvers or something like that. They kept shouting. And somebody said to me before the game, don't bowl short. Don't bowl. Ian Melvin, wasn't it? Ian Melvin. Don't bowl short to Ian Melvin. He'll just put you away. And I thought, he'll not put me away. I'm too ridiculous. He just put it into the field every time I put one short. And as I got older, I realised that actually pace is important, but it's not the be all and end all. So how did it help you prepare for the challenges ahead? If playing alongside this guy who was on the Notts staff, I don't know if Derek played any games, in between playing for Notts, but being 16 in a first team with these, not superstars, but high level players, how did that prepare you?
Yeah, I get the thing right. I didn't play with Derek. Derek had moved on by then, and he was a fully fledged Notts. I didn't play with him, but some of these guys that were playing for Retford, a lot of them had Notts seconds, and Keith Jackson had played for Yorkshire seconds, and Jeff Key had played for Notts seconds, and Alan Ball, who was this fielder that wasn't far off Randall. He was an amazing off-spinning batsman, and he finished up. He was on the Notts staff. He actually fielded as 12th man for England.
Alan Ball,
and caught a catch. Yeah, and caught a catch for England at Trent Bridge. In the days when the 12th man used to be. Yeah, so these, as I was growing up, as I was 13 and 14, and I was trying to make my way in the second team. These were my heroes.
Yeah.
These were my heroes in the first team, and suddenly I found myself in the dressing room with them, and nicely on merit, because I was there on performance, and we were bowling against. I mean, oppositions. Mike Smedley, who was the county captain. Tim Robinson was the young up and coming batsman that became obviously the opening batsman for Notts and England in time. We were playing. It was a proper level of cricket,
and that was in the old Bassett Law 1A then, wasn't it?
Bassett Law 1A, yeah.
Which I remember watching clearly, because I was never good enough to get into those sides. But it always looked competitive. It always looked good standard, and it always looked hard on the pitch, which is what you want. And then off the pitch and have a beer. Anyway, I'm not going to detract further. We'll come back and we'll talk about your Northamptonshire trial in a second.
I do have
No, go on, Nigel. Go on.
It's just that I do have a story myself about Melvers, which we can, if you go back to that.
Oh, tell us now. Let's use it now. Let's go.
I can tell you one about Ian. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go now. Do it.
So when I was bowling and for the first team, we went in the local derby was against Bryden, and the fellow you've just mentioned, Ian Melvin. He was the opening batsman. He was a very dangerous batsman. And he had huge sideburns.
He did.
Huge sideburns. And we called him the gangster. And in the dressing room, my dad, who was keeping wicket at that time and captain, he said to me, whatever you do not bowl short at the gangster. But he also knew that I could, whack it down a little bit. Anyway, what do you do as a headstrong kid who's just been told not to bowl short? And I first ball got you loose, and second ball I bowled a short one at Ian Melvin, and it was short and it was quick, and he hooked me, and it went clean out of the ground. It hit the factory wall. It bounced onto the concrete. Made a right mess of the new ball. Guy threw it back to the keeper, and I daren't look at my dad. And he looked at this. He'd been looking at this brand new ball that was now 8 balls old. And he, at the end of the over, he said, "I told you, blankety blank, not to bowl short at him." I went down to final leg, and I thought, he can't do it again. So I tried it again, Kev, the following over. And I did bowl my quicker one at him, and he went to hook it, and he gloved it. And he gloved it to my dad, and he was caught behind down the leg side. And he actually said to me, as he left the crease, and we didn't know each other, he said to me, "Bloody Eric Bristow." Which, probably I'd got this little kink in the action. And I called him, "Get off, you gangster." And he looked at me, and I didn't. Anyway, after the game, to Ian's great credit, he came up to me as the young kid and said, "What was that about?" Now, what I didn't know, he wasn't called the gangster. It was only Retford that called him the gangster. But I didn't know that. I thought he was known as the gangster. And to his great credit, Ian and I then did share a beer, and then became, over the years, the biggest cricket friends, and we finished up playing in the same side together as well. But there's some of the things that you do after a game, when you did stay behind and have a drink with the opposition.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. You know, that's exactly the point, really. You know, back when I used to watch that, you used to play hard, you used to give it all, but then you'd come off and have a drink. And I'm aware that you and Melvers stayed friends since that day, as far as I know. And if anybody's wondering what Ian Melvin looks like, what I always recall him looking like with his sideburns is the lead singer out of the Flying Pickets. So if ever anybody wants to have a look at the lead singer at the Flying Pickets, that's what Melvers looked like. And we'll come back and talk about your Northants trial in a minute. You are listening to the podcast Bats, Balls and Banter. Please like, subscribe and share with your fellow enthusiasts. Hey, don't forget to leave a review, and your support keeps the banter going. So just before the break, we was talking about how you'd earned a trial with Northants as a bowler. But can you walk us through that experience then? And obviously we've discussed about this potential flaw and how you reacted when they found that flaw in your bowling action.
Yeah, sure. I got my opportunity to play at Northampton. It was against Middlesex. Second 11 cricket, as I said, it was just different in those days, and you weren't playing with 9 other trialists and 2 academy lads and whatever. I found myself, I was opening the bowling with David Capel. And if anybody knows that name, he'd been playing for the Northants first. He'd got a bit of an injury. I mean, they tried him, didn't they, he was one of the cricketers they wanted to become the new Botham.
Yes. It wouldn't have been many games, but he played a couple a few for England in the early days.
Yeah. But before that, he was opening the bowling at one end, and I was opening the bowling in this game against Middlesex, and I got a wicket, and I was thrilled. I got the first wicket, and in walked this very familiar.
So Middlesex, you say? Middlesex.
Okay. Yeah. And in came to bat at number 3 was Roland Butcher. Yeah.
Okay.
And Roland Butcher had been hit. It was just before helmets, and he'd got hit. He'd got a serious injury from Middlesex, and this happened to be his comeback game, playing for Middlesex seconds.
Great.
How lucky could I be? And I'd got a wicket. It was in my 4th over. I remember it to this day. It's 2 balls gone. And the captain came over to me, Jim Yardley, and he said, just take a rest at the end of the over. Well, I thought, take a rest.
I'm just getting going here. I'm just getting going.
I'm in my 4th over. I've got a wicket. Take a rest. Well, all I can say, I'd got 4 balls left in the over. And at the end of the over, Roland Butcher was 16 not out. And I bowled the first ball, and he drove me through mid-off for 4. So I bowled 1 short, and he whacked me to the cover point boundary for another 4. And I pitched up again, and he hit me straight over my head. And obviously then he was bound to get the bouncer from me. He knew it was coming, and that went square leg for 4. So he'd got 16 at the end of the over. And I thought, well, now I was quite happy that the skipper was taking me off. But I went down to fine leg, and well, I'm still on a high. I've just got my first wicket. Capel bowling the next over, and Roland Butcher hooked him, and I thought, oh no, it's coming down to me at fine leg. I've just gone for 16, but this ball just kept going and going and going. And if anybody remembers Northants in those days, the cricket ground was shared with the football ground. It was a bit like Bramall Lane, a 3-sided ground. And
Wantage this ball Road? Was it called
Wantage Road? Good memory. Wantage Road. That was where my debut was. Well, it kept going, and it landed. It hit the cop roof. And in those days, I think Northampton Town, probably still the same, I don't know, but it wasn't in a great state. And this ball bounced through the roof. It landed. Obviously, it was no plastic seating in the cop. It was all stone steps, and it bounced on these concrete steps, and I had to go over the fence and whatever, and I picked this ball up, and it did look as though it was only 10 overs old. It looked as though 3 dogs had chewed it, and they changed the ball, and I didn't bowl again. Look, Roland Butcher got 100. He got 100, no problem. But after he was out after lunch, I got another wicket, and I got a wicket in the second innings. I've got 3 wickets in the match.
Can I? Sorry to stop you there. No, let's continue in a minute, but
yeah,
let's go back to that over where you'd had 2 balls, and he came to you and said, "Have a rest." Did he ever explain why? Because it seems strange. And did it affect your last 4 balls, or was it just Roland Butcher was too good?
He didn't have to explain why, Kev, because I think by the time the guy hit me for 16, I think this is where my first, and I want to make it clear to anybody, it was my first. I did have other instances. The difference between competing with county cricketers and cricketers that were good cricketers playing in the league and test match cricketers, which was what Roland Butcher was.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
And there was the difference. And I think the captain, he just knew that he'd got a try list like me, and there was an England guy walking in. And I think that's why he was trying to protect me. I get that now.
Yeah.
But I got 3. They beat us easily, by the way, and Butcher didn't even bat in the second innings. But they did say, show promise and whatever, and they wanted to see me again. It didn't get any easier. The game was away at Lancashire, and Capel was back in the first team, so he wasn't with us. But the lineup for Lancashire, it was quite something. Frank Hayes, who played for England, he was in Lancashire second team. They'd got Neil Radford. He'd got well, he was the one. He opened the bowling with both of them for Worcester in the end. He got 1,000 first-class wickets.
Yeah.
They've got Jack Simmons, if you remember Flat Jack. Off spin. You got Steve O'Shaughnessy, who'd got about 300 first-class wickets. He's now an umpire. They'd got Harry Pillin, who was coming to the end of his career, and he'd got over 15,000 first-class runs for Lancashire. Well, I'm going to start bowling at these guys in a bit. And I thought, okay, it's a tough gig, but I got 2 wickets in the first innings, and then they declared, and we're in the dressing room, and the skipper said, I need a night watchman. And everybody had put their head down. Nobody wanted to face. Neil Radford was coming in pretty sharp, and he looked at me and he said, you fancy being night watchman, Nigel? Well, I'm not going to say no, because yeah. I mean, let's be fair. I was playing club cricket, and I was number 11 for Retford. I was just a blocker. But I thought, I've got a decent enough defence. So I said, yeah. Right then, put the pads on. And as you can imagine, 6:15 with 15 minutes to go. Yeah, we lost the wicket. And I find myself, I got Neil Radford whacking it down at one end, and Jack Simmons bowling these fat, fizzing off spinners against me left-hander. And I did stay in, and I was 3 not out overnight. And I remember ringing my dad. He said, how have you gone on, lad? I said, I've got 2 wickets. Dad. I said, but I'm batting at the moment. They've sent me a night watchman, and I'm 3 not out. And he said, I think I might come down. He was going to come down the following day.
Was it at Old Trafford? You said Lancashire.
No, it wasn't. I wasn't lucky enough to be. It was a university ground. It wasn't at Old Trafford.
Okay.
And anyway, he didn't come. We'd got a video shop in the day, so one of us had to work. And but I'm pleased he didn't, because if I told you I was out fourth ball,
First ball the next morning.
Yeah, I caught Frank Hayes, bowl Jack Simmons. So that was me gone, but I suppose I'd done
mission accomplished.
And then I got 2 more wickets in the second innings. I got and I thought, well, I've got 7 wickets in 2 games, and I'm thinking things have gone quite well.
And you're there as a bowler on trial, so you'd be well happy with that.
Oh, well happy, mate. And I knew it had come out well, etc. And I knew there was a nice bit of chat. And then Dad got the news. In those days, a letter, and Dad showed me the letter. I've seen the letter, and it was like, although, hi, Mike, your lad has shown extreme good promise, and we're very happy with him. And then I saw the word, but and as soon as you see, but unfortunately, and described that they thought they didn't know what it was, but they felt there was some sort of, I think they described it as a hick in his action. Obviously, my dad tried to say, well, if you take him on, surely you can iron that out.
Work on that, yeah, you would think so.
Yeah, and they said maybe, but on the other hand, we're not going to take the chance. So,
wow.
So that was.
And would you? And I know this is probably a harsh question to ask, but Would you agree with them? As I say, I never really saw you as a bowler, so I don't know. I can't comment. But would you say it was a fair call? Did you have a flaw?
Well, I'd say that. I didn't know. If you get any youngster now, if you say to them, I want you to get to the crease and I want you to throw it, it's impossible. You can't do it. It just wouldn't work. So, yes, obviously, what was happening was I was bowling what I said. Right, I knew I'd got to the end of my run up, and I thought I'm going to bowl a quicker one in, say, in club cricket, and it did hit the keeper's gloves a little bit. It took it a bit higher and whatever.
Did it feel any different to you? Did it?
No, I just knew I was going to. I was fit, you see, Kev. I was a fit lad, and I just thought, now I'm going to put a bit more. It was an effort ball. It was the effort ball.
Yeah.
But then what happened, and club cricket, it's a tough game, and what I was doing, because I was getting wickets for Retford, I was finding the opposition players, as you walk round the boundary line, they were stopping. They were stopping at square leg, 3 or 4 of them, Worksop, Steatley, Chesterfield, and they were literally no ball to the, shouting it. Perhaps I've been a bit more experienced, but then it started to get to me, and Keith Jackson, who I've mentioned earlier, the second team bowler, he worked on me. I worked really hard to try and get this hick, if you like, out of my action, but by doing it. And I watched me, and it was the first few years then of the old-fashioned video camera.
Okay.
And I saw my action, and we changed it. But by changing it, I was no longer natural, and I was no longer
good enough.
I just became an average club bowler, and then finished up basically not bowling at all because things just went a bit downhill. So perhaps Northampton made the right decision. Yeah,
or it might have been able to work on you, but I suppose if there's 2 or 3 in the same position as you, and of the 3, 2 didn't have this potential issue, then unfortunately you're going to go by the wayside. But
exactly.
Which must have been quite heartbreaking. But what did impress me in your story is that wasn't the end, which for lots of people, let's be brutally honest here, would have just become an average club cricketer playing just because they could with what they got. But you being you was determined now, well, hang on a minute, if I'm not going to be what I want to be at that, I'm going to transition from bowling to being a batsman. And you did that without, from the outside looking in, because you turned into a batsman scoring runs for fun. How did that happen? What was the biggest challenges there? Because, as you've said, you've gone from a genuine number 11 who had a very good defensive technique to when I first started to see you in action, an opening bat. You haven't gone from 11 to 6, 7, 8. You've gone from, in your words, a genuine 11 to an opening batsman. There must have been some huge challenges converting yourself to a batsman, and did it refine your game moving forward?
Yeah, well, let's get one thing right. I was absolutely gutted. I was on the floor with the news because it's all I wanted to be. And I just remember, I didn't do this transition on my own, let me tell you. There was one fella there, and that was my dad. And he said to me, "What are you going to do now, lad?" And I didn't really know. And he said, and look, Kev, whether it's you, me, or anybody that's listening, we didn't always in life listen to our dad and their advice, did we?
Yeah.
But,
agreed.
But at cricket, because I knew what he'd done, I listened to him and he said, "I'll tell you what we're going to do, lad. We're going to make you into a batsman." And it was him, mate. He spent hours with me. He threw the ball at me from 6 yards, 12 yards, 18 yards, and then he'd bring bowlers in and he'd get them to bowl at me and he'd stand behind the nets, and he spent hours, mate, hours on me. And I know you might have just missed it, but I did suddenly I was 11, 10. I got a few runs at number 8 in the Sunday 11, the 7, 6. And yeah, within 3 years, I had made this transition from number 11, club batsman, and I was now opening the batting in this same league. And it was just wrong time, wrong place as far as county cricket, and and bowling, because these 3 years that it took me to become a batter, they were the 3 years that counties would look at a youngster.
Yeah.
And by the time I became an opening bat, I was then too old for them to look at me. I'm not saying I was a county batsman. I'm just saying, look, this was my lot, and so I'm going to be determined to make myself into a club batsman, and that's what I did for the next, I don't know, Kev, was it 25 years?
At least I would have thought.
And I have 2 records there, Kev, and I have to say, my dad, it was quite funny. Dad was happy on one and not happy on another, and I broke his record at Retford for the most number of runs scored for the club, which I do know still stands to the day.
The overall, not in a season, for the overall.
No, the overall runs of getting. Dad had got like 12,000. I got 16,000 runs for Retford. So, and he was thrilled with that because he'd been responsible for a lot of that. But the other one where he wasn't quite as happy, he had a record. He'd done 13 years without missing a game. Without missing a game on a Saturday, which was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And I did him on that one, Kev, and I managed to do 16 years without missing a game on a Saturday. And that includes chicken pox and at an infectious stage, not being allowed in the club.
You saying you had chicken?
Wow. I had chicken pox at the infectious stage, wasn't allowed inside with anybody, so I'm mad, but I drove my car to the side of the pavilion, got changed in the car, led the team out from outside the pavilion.
Yeah, they joined
all
you
went
outside.
into the team, and then I went out and opened the batting, and then I got in my car and went home. And I know that's stupid. Look, here's another one for you. There's no reason. 16 years without missing a game. I don't mind telling anybody. So I've been married 3 times. I don't think it's any coincidence that I was married. Let's get one thing right. I was married in March, October, and November. So
no correlation whatsoever. Thinks not. But I remember. I remember. Obviously, when I was coming through, your dad was. So Mike was still playing. Obviously, you were playing, and obviously you've got CJ, your brother, who obviously played a good standard of cricket there at Retford. Let's not forget CJ. But
absolutely,
I remember hearing Mike, and again, we're being open and honest here. I wouldn't ever say that we were best of buddies. I wouldn't ever say that we agreed on everything. But I did have respect for Mike, and I think I've told you that in the past. I remember. I remember being at the ground and it's like a holiday in the cricket season. Why don't you take your holiday outside the cricket season? And so I can understand now why you never missed a game, because from Mike's perspective, why would you take a holiday in the cricket season? Cricket season is cricket. And that sort of thing stuck with me, and I still find myself saying it today. If, where's Bill this week? Oh, he's on holiday. And I'd say, holiday in a cricket season? It's just not acceptable. And that was from Mike. That was a saying that I picked up from Mike.
That was definitely one of his sayings. It's how I was brought up. And his other one, Kev, which I always stuck with, and I'd like to let anybody know, his other piece of advice to me was never get out on a 9.
Oh, no, I've heard this, and I think I know where from, but tell us, what was his reasoning behind that? Yeah. It was Henry. Henry told me that this is one of the pieces of advice you spoke to Henry with.
I spoke to him recent September about this, because he asked me if I'd got any advice.
Yes.
And my dad's words to me, never get out on a 9, lad. And how he's explained to me was, and whether it's any different now, because in England we're playing with electronic scoreboards and you can see what your individual scores are, but back in the day it was on tins and it was on rollers, and your score only went up if you got in the 40s. So he said, count, lad, count your runs when you get to 9. And if you think about this, it helps you concentrate. When you get to 9, don't get to 10, get double figures. It's a lot more. And then if you get into the teens, right, 19, 20, get into 20s. Once you've got into your 20s and you've got 29, well, you're in. So make them pay. And you know what? After a game, 29. Somebody said, how many have you got? And they'd say, oh, about 30. No, you didn't. You got 29. But 30 sounded a lot more.
Yeah.
So get to 39, and then you think, oh, I'm near my 40s here. Obviously, we know 49. You know what you want when you get to 49. So you get the 50. And then he said to me, never face another ball, when you get 50. Take the applause from your colleague or whatever, and never face another ball till you've taken guard again. And I'll tell any youngster this, get 50, you haven't done your job. So get 50, take guard, okay? Take guard again. What you're doing is you're giving yourself a minute just to get going again, and you're telling the opposition, I haven't done yet.
I'm here to stay, yeah.
59, get into the 60s. Look, we're not talking about 69, that's for a different podcast. So you get into... So once you can get to 79, you're getting close, don't you? And now at 79, you're making that happen. You're making the opposition hurt here. So 89, get into those 90s. And obviously 99 goes without saying. And I do think that's what helped me go on to stick in and manage to score a few hundreds in my career as well.
Oh, more than a few, yeah. Runs for fun, as you said, 16,000 of them in total. But it's a mindset thing then, isn't it? It's setting your mind every time. And, if I think you've done 50, like you say, it's not your job, but it's half your job then, let's say, because, everybody wants to go out and score 100. So that's half your job. So, if you take your stance again, take your mark, have a look round, pull your trousers up, pull your pad round, play with your pad, whatever, you're setting yourself to go again now for the second half of your job, really, I suppose. And as you said, and it must have resonated, Nigel, because Henry told me afterwards, he said what it was, and it did make sense to him, and he's an aspiring cricketer, as you know, who's a bowler who wants to be a bowling all-rounder, and he does listen. So I'm grateful for that bit of advice. But look, when we come back, we'll take a short break, and when we come back, I'd like to talk about, after your disappointment, really, of Northamptonshire, which clearly was, and as in your words, you were absolutely gutted, and then you transitioned yourself into a batsman and went on to score thousands of runs. But not only did you improve a discipline from what was bowling into batting, you then became into leadership and leading the team. And I'd like to come on to that in a minute, if that's okay. So we're splitting this conversation into two parts to keep each one around our usual 40-minute length. There's a lot to cover, and we want to keep it engaging and manageable for our listeners. So we hope you enjoyed part one, and be sure to catch part two soon. This podcast series is sponsored by Cricket Finder, the world's fastest growing cricket networking platform, bringing clubs, teams and players together from all over the world. Use the code POD24 to receive your subscription discount at cricketfinder.com. So thank you all for tuning in to Bats, Balls and Banter. And don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more exciting episodes. Until next time, take care and keep the cricket spirit alive.